All right, we're starting to work through some of the installation things on our Linux machine. What I have here is Ubuntu 20.04. That's the most recent version of Ubuntu, which has long-term support. And in general, you're going to want to stick to versions of Ubuntu which have long-term support. There might be a newer version of Ubuntu available, but you always want to make sure you have that long-term support. And when I say long-term support, that means they are going to be providing security updates for at least the next 5 years of this operating system. So if you're on a Windows machine, you might want to run this in a virtual machine, which I'm doing here. You can actually see this is a virtual box. That's what I've named the computer. You could, for the DSI, I probably wouldn't recommend running it as a virtual machine unless you have a pretty powerful desktop, like 32 gigs of RAM, 8-core processor, that sort of thing, where you could really allocate a lot of resources to your virtual machine. I think if you're working on like an everyday laptop, like a 2 or a 4-core processor with only 16 gigabytes of RAM, having to run 2 operating systems at the same time is really going to put a strain on that system. So I wouldn't recommend the virtual machine setup. I would, unless you have that really powerful desktop. If you are running a laptop, maybe a more average daily driver computer, what I would suggest is setting up a dual boot. And if you do a quick Google search like, hey, I want how to set up a dual boot with Ubuntu on Windows 10. You're going to get a bunch of tutorials, and you'll want to search through those and find one that seems reputable. You know, you want to look at the quality of the websites, make sure it's not all filled with ads and junky, and find a tutorial that'll walk you through it. Before you do that, it's really important that you actually look up your actual computer, like a Dell Inspiron, XP13 or whatever the model of your computer is. There are 2 sort of subsystems or boot systems that Windows machines are built upon. One is called BIOS, BIOS, and the other is called, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's UEFI. And how you set up your dual boot system is going to vary between those 2 things. So you'll want to determine which one of those 2 your computer is, and then get on some Google and set up some dual boot. In general, at Galvanize, we don't actually support the installation of those things, or at least we don't guarantee support of the installation of those things. But if you get stuck or you're struggling, go ahead and reach out to us, and we'll do everything that we can to help you. But getting into it, what we're going to do first is we want to just make sure that we have some development tools in our computer, and we're just going to get a pretty common set of development tools that is going to get us, the main thing we're after right now is Git, but this is also going to get us some common tools across a bunch of different languages that are just going to be nice to have on your computer without having to go and install them individually. We're going to start with the command sudo. Sudo stands for super user do. That means that you will be able to actually install files into the root directory from even though you're logged in an individual user's account. And the package manager that's built into Ubuntu is really robust. It's called apt, and this apt-get is a pretty common command. But the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to update, make sure that our apt-get app is as new as it can be. We can see that that took care of itself pretty quickly. The next thing, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go sudo apt-get install build essential. And since I had already put in my password, it doesn't ask for it again. And then this gives me like a list of things that it's going to install. and asks me, hey, are you sure that you want to install all of these things? And I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, I have 143 megabytes of space. I do want to install all of these things. It's going to fetch those. Go ahead and go through the installation. And we can see that installation is done. And I think that set of development tools included Git, but I actually didn't see it in that list. I also didn't look super closely, but I want to go ahead and check just by running my command git version. And it says command git not fan, but you can install it pretty easily using your package manager Git. So let's go ahead and do that. Do we want to install it? Yes, we do. It's going to fetch that. Go ahead and complete the installation. And just to double check, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I close this window and open up a new terminal just in case there's changes. That might have been why it didn't happen that first time. It might have been installed. But now I can see that I do have a Git version installed. So that's how we can get the first set of sort of development tools that we want for Ubuntu and Linux. And moving forward, we're going to go ahead and move on with the next step of getting Anaconda installed in our next video.